there is a Rajiv Gandhi Youth University in Sri Perumbudur, who started the first department of life skills education. It is now being headed by a person called Dr. Sibnath Deb, but the department was started by a Dr. Radhakrishnan Nair, who is now in the Central University of Kerala in Kasargod, and
Oh,
there is a center for life skills education there. Uh, so you might want to actually plug into that to really look at how people are pitching
yes.
this whole idea. That secondly, there is an Indian Association of Life Skills Education, which is a fairly, I think it's about a decade or a decade and a half uh, old, perhaps even 20 years. That and it consists of people from various universities who are deeply interested in life skills education, and they have been. Uh, Maya, can you just give me a moment? There's a
Sure,
call
sure,
coming in
sure,
the
sure.
office. Hello? Yeah, yeah. Really sorry.
Not at all. We pause the recording, so that's okay. Yeah.
Um, so these are a group of people who are either practitioners in NGOs or are university teachers, and uh, but they're very dedicated, and so there's a
Where are they based, Shekhar?
no, it's an All India
Oh, it's
Association.
all India. Okay.
Association. They have a website. It's called the Indian Association of Life Skills Education, and they've held conferences, and the
Okay.
conferences have had themes. So you'll have a sense of, because all this will feed. Like
Definitely. Absolutely. Yeah.
the third thing that I wanted to mention is there is a person called Dr. Maitri who did her PhD from NIAS, and
That's Gopal Krishna. Yes.
she's currently working with the Karnataka Health Promotion Trust. Her thesis is an extraordinary treatise on exactly the research question that you're going to answer about how the appropriation of the life skills methodology for a completely different agenda and its franchising by many agencies to basically serve a corporate purpose rather than the spirit in which it was intended when WHO and other UN agencies actually came up with the concept of life skills education in the past. That now Maitri's thesis is available on public domain. If after this meeting is over, I'm happy to send it to you. I will just email the PDF copy to you.
We would love to have that. Yes. Yeah. What is the full name? It's not Maitri Gopal Krishna, no?
No,
No.
No, Maya, this is
The
Maitri
other
from.
Maitri.
Yes,
We, I
yes,
think I think for our iSelf research,
yes,
we did reach out to her.
yes.
Yes.
We did meet her,
But
in
I think
fact, at
she was
NIAS.
doing her PhD at that time. Maybe she's completed her PhD since then.
she has. She's
Hmm.
R Maitri.
Okay.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
talking about Maitri,
Gopal Krishna.
Gopalakrishnan, yeah.
who's a drama therapist. She's
That's right.
different.
That's right.
She did
Yeah.
her PhD from TIS on drama therapy.
That's right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
but Maitri's was completely a deep dive into life skills education. It's an extraordinary thesis.
So where is she based now? She's in Bangalore, isn't she?
She works for Karnataka Health Promotion Trust
Okay. All
Okay.
right.
on an adolescent health program. So she's looking at a lot of adolescent related issues. And
Okay. All right. Yeah.
so, yeah.
So all the people who've joined here are all my colleagues. So you know Akila, but there are other people. We have two Swapnils. They're both based in Mumbai. We have Swati Shelar, who's based in right now in Kolkata, and Roshna, who's based currently in Kerala. I think Roshna. Otherwise, she's based in Bangalore. So they're all working on the same project. That's it. So so Shekhar, I know you've done a lot of work, and I know you've written books also on life skills. I think for Macmillan's years ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts about life skills now after so many years? Especially Teacher Foundation looks at social emotional learning. People talk about 21st century skills. Others talk about value education. What are your thoughts about life skills in particular in this realm or in this domain?
So Maya, with your blessings and permission, I just want to screen share because
Yes,
I've done some prep.
sure. I will just give you a screen share facility. Just a minute.
Given.
Given. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Swapnil.
So I just wanted to say that so I wrote this series for Macmillan called On Track, and it's from grade 3 to grade 9. So it's a series of 7 books: third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth. But they are workbooks for children. It's actually children can work on it, and it becomes a kind of a personal almanac for them. And if they retain those 7 books and see them 10 or 15 years later, it's almost like a journey that they have
Hmm.
witnessed over
Hmm.
6 7 years. And what we did when we developed it was we had a matrix. So what we had was age on the one hand,
Yeah.
and we had context on the other. and
Yeah.
and the context moved from, let's say, lighter entry issues such as the self and identity, to more complex relationship social issues, and then to highly complex personal issues like gender, sexuality, and so on. So as you move towards degrees of complexity, and as you move towards age, so
Yeah.
if you have a 6-year-old and you're looking at self, what should the content be? If it's a 14-year-old and selfhood,
Be different.
what should it be? If it is 6-year-old related to gender and sexuality, what is your entry point? And if
Yeah.
it's a 14-year-old, that, so when we look at that matrix, and we have a 6-year-old here, and we have uh, uh, so the age is going here and the gender and sexuality is going here. In that
Yeah.
matrix, towards this corner would be the more complex.
Most complex. Yeah.
So that's
Got
how
it.
we developed the matrix, and then worked over the 7 books, to calibrate the content in a way that it moves from simple to more complex level. That, but all the contexts were addressed.
Are the books still in print? Because I know it was there in 2007, 2008, I'm sure. I
They
know
are
because,
they are because they're still prescribed by CBSE.
okay,
Yeah.
great. Okay. Yeah.
The other issue is that uh, I have been working for the last several years on a Karnataka government project on community, um, child and adolescent mental health delivery, and that's the website nimhanschildproject.in. I put it on chat. So if you go there to the section on training, and on training you click on adolescents, or 6 to 12 or under 6, you'll have a lot of our more recent material on life skills, which are
Yeah.
all which are also organized contextually, uh,
Okay.
because we are more and more beginning to realize that context matters. These are not just a set of generic skills that you can teach devoid of context.
Yeah.
So the context could be an emotional context such as anger, the context could be an experiential context such as trauma, or the context could be a more generic context such as selfhood or citizenship. So,
Yeah.
so by and large, now we are gravitating towards a premise, a philosophy where we look at the place of life skills in education, where we are repurposing education. And I notice in the material that you've sent that you're trying to align this whole thing with the NEP 2020 principles
Yes.
of this learning how to learn, and
Yeah.
don't don't look at content and theory and examinations and all of that. It's the emphasis on application, and the
Absolutely.
emphasis
Yeah.
uh,
And
so
actually, just to let you also know that we've got this group from Harvard University called Harvard Easel Labs, who are going to be looking at all the life skills and helping us map it. You know, see the connections between the different life skills and so on, because they do a mapping of all the SEL frameworks from across the world.
Right.
So in the same way, they're going to try and help us with that. So that comes a little further down the line.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. So these resources are useful, Shekhar. So Akila, Swapnil, we've got it down, isn't it? Because we've got
Yes.
to follow up both with Maitri as well as the Rajiv Gandhi uh,
Youth University,
Youth University.
Shri Perambur, and the Indian Association of Life Skills Education.
Yes,
Yeah.
Indian Association, because these are all important because they obviously have some valuable, experience and expertise to provide.
Yeah. So I've also put down the links of my more recent initiative, which has peripherally to do with life skills. That you can have a look at leisure.
Yeah, you had sent this to us also on in the email too. Yeah,
Okay.
we've got this. We'll take a look at this too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to, basically see what has happened is that there's multiple ways in which we are, other than the whole WHO list of 10 life skills, this whole sense of certain qualities, such as responsibility or loyalty or kindness or courage, compassion, gratitude, forgiveness, respect, honesty, cooperation. And so there is a conceptualization of life skills as a personal quality and a way of being. And the reason I'm stating this is that going ahead, both for TTF as a foundation, as well as this research that you're undertaking, if is ultimately if it is geared towards a repurposing of education, and if I may take the liberty to state that the purpose of education is the development of an egalitarian personhood, the development of a socially responsive and responsible citizenry, and the development of a personality imbued with aesthetic sensibility, of life, of nature, of music, of art, of relationships, of emotions, of empathy, of obligation, of social cohesion, and of solidarity. And this is even more important in the light of the COVID pandemic, uh, because I suspect, Maya, and other friends in TTF, that COVID is completely going to change
Yeah.
our
And
psyche in an evolutionary method. Um,
yeah.
Akila and others, if you could also note down social cohesion in a post-COVID world, University of Auckland. It's called He Orange Hua. It's a Maori word for. It's called social cohesion in a post-COVID world. University of Auckland. You will read something. It's a very short document about how you can repurpose and contextualize life skills to align it with the post-COVID reality, along with the concept note that your collaborators as part of this life skills um, group that of 16 or
Yeah.
17 agencies that. So uh, the one way of looking at it is through this quality purpose. The other is, if you look at a core um, alignment, if you look at it from an alignment perspective, and you have all these kind of uh, let's look at literacy, for example, and expressive literacy and receptive literacy. Exactly what kind of skills are we looking for, and you see how contextually important they are, especially um, of course Maitri will not agree with this because she feels that
Why?
because the appropriation of life skills for a consumer society is it's completely taken away from how WHO intended it from a well-being perspective to actually serving the market economy. uh,
Yeah.
you know
Hmm.
so all the soft skills in how to increase your profit and how to make the customer happy, and how all your HR departments have appropriated life skills, and uh, so you see, so The first one that I presented is about personal qualities, and this is about alignment. And then, if you look at it's the whole SCL paradigms, whether you're talking about Castle or whether you're talking about Seal, but putting them in some kind of a summary, this whole business of learning, identity, self-awareness, fitness, health, emotional development, solving problems, kindness, intimacy, living in balance, letting go and holding on, social skills, and how then you get into a whole melange of contextual ways of being, prioritizing or time management, working independently, confidence, leadership, conflict management, and I notice in some of the documents that you've sent, there's a whole body of literature, for example, on peace studies and conflict studies that
That's right. Yeah.
and how they operate both at an interpersonal level and at larger social levels in those places where there is internal strife, um, and communal issues and so on. And I also notice this very strong emphasis in the documents that you've sent on inclusion, diversity, and special needs people, which is a very important part of the NEP agenda. And therefore, how do we reconceptualize life skills to be more inclusive? So that's the kind of way in which we can form a framework. So that's where this whole business of character is a broad trait, and what you guys have been working on all this time on SEL, and in
Yes. And
terms
we
of
continue to work there.
yeah,
Yes.
on I self on the one hand,
Yes.
and on the other hand on non-cognitive traits and habits, which is this growth mindset and 21st century skills, and then all the soft skills and grit, resilience, all of which have been referred to in the documents that you sent. That so uh, now WHO spoke about these 10 life skills, but uh, they can be recategorized into social skills, thinking skills, and emotional skills. I'll go into this in more detail later, but I wanted to share with you this important framework. So, whatever model of life skills you take, they
Yeah.
operate in certain contexts. Uh, the context of gender, sexuality, peer pressure, career choice, attraction, and so on. And the issue is that in a given context, more than one skill may operate, and a given skill can operate in more than one context. So, if it is a peer pressure context, you have coping with stress, you have decision making, but decision making as a single skill may operate in a conflict situation, in a relationship situation, and how this triangulation is actually completed by the pedagogy that so in the research work that you'll have to do, uh, the glossary is important, but I think the glossary would need to go hand in hand with the pedagogies.
Yeah.
Uh, so,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so the glossaries would have to be operationally defined. So, okay, so that brings me to the end of this part. Then I want to quickly go to another thing that I wanted to share with you. So we often, speak about this business of who, that the intention of this is that the learners are the subject and not the object of the process. Now, what this means is that the
Sorry,
process
Shekhar, could you just go back to the earlier? What is X mets? Is it experiential
ex-
methods?
experiential
Okay, experiential methods. Okay.
experiential methods. Um, i- and what I mean by this is that the objective is to actually liberate participants from both internal and external oppression, to make them capable of changing their reality and their lives in the society that they live in. So when we speak about 21st century, which is one of the, let's say, founding principles of the work that you're going to embark on, and we have to look at the 21st century from the lens of COVID,
Yes,
we cannot uh, divorce ourselves from this reality, uh, because I have the prediction is, and this is not the voice of doom, the third wave in October and November is going to hit children because they are unvaccinated, and the virus has to find a susceptible host, and the trials are still not over. So we are going to be in a very difficult situation the next 2 to 3 years where children are concerned, and their lives are going to change completely, because I don't think schools will open, because schools are super spreaders. They're super spreading events, and we've already seen what
I think so. I
yeah,
also feel it's after the schools reopened that we got the second wave.
yeah. And also, we took it easy after the first wave, and malls were opened. We had
Yes,
several super spreading events. I won't go into them because they're politically volatile. uh, but which means that this research that you're undertaking has to be very deeply embedded in an envisaging or an envisioning of what a post-COVID reality over the next two to
agreed,
three years are going to be.
agreed,
So there has to be some look at uh, past records of earlier pandemics and what happened to the status of children. So you'll have to go historically as well. So which means that it's going to be a very evocative and intellectually a very stimulating exercise. That
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, I
We
want
should
to
look at what happened with the Spanish flu
yeah yeah yeah
in
yeah
the early 20th century.
yeah.
Hmm.
I also want you to have a look at this particular. You probably have it already, but when you look at this whole heart, hands, health, and head paradigm, and in the heart, relating, caring; in the hands, giving, working; in the health, living and being; in the head, thinking and managing. And in each of them, this whole set which pertain to this whole 21st century thing. For example, if you look at community service and volunteering, leadership, and responsible citizenship, and you guys would probably be familiar of many agencies which are working with citizenship. For example, there is a Bangalore group called Children and Citizenship Group. One of your earlier colleagues, Shaheen, has been working quite extensively with a group in Calcutta. In fact, some time back they had a conference.
Shaheen Sasa.
Yeah,
Ah, okay, all right, yeah. Oh, I mean, she used to be with Wipro. Yeah, that's
yeah,
right.
yeah. So there is a Bangalore-based group which is working on children and citizenship. There are this way of conceptualizing life skills as well.
So
Uh,
this particular framework or model, is this yours or is
no,
this
no,
put
no.
together by
The,
other
the,
people?
this is taken from some. This is not
Okay,
mine.
all right.
It's
Yeah, yeah.
so finally, I want to take you through this. The 10 WHO life skills can broadly be divided into communication, interpersonal, decision making, critical thinking, and coping and self management. But here is the interesting thing. If you look at communication and interpersonal skills, which is the first domain, this
Yeah,
itself has so many skills. It has communication, negotiation, refusal, empathy, cooperation, teamwork, and advocacy. Interpersonal communication skills itself has sub
that's right.
skills. Sub skills.
Yeah,
Similarly, negotiation has sub skills. Empathy is operationally defined. Cooperation is operationally defined. Advocacy is operationally defined. Decision making, the second skill has these two, critical thinking, but each of these has sub skills. So this business of information gathering, evaluation, alternate solutions, analysis skills, or if you look at critical thinking, how do you analyze media and peer interactions? How do you analyze attitudes, values, and norms? How do you identify relevant information and information sources? And the last thing, which has three, which is locus of control, managing feelings and managing stress. And each of these again has sub skills such as goal setting, self assessment, or if particular feelings like anger or grief and anxiety. And this is going to be fairly major. Already this business of COVID orphans has started, and
Yeah,
we have
yeah,
and the whole issue of child abuse and child trauma, which is and these are known as the silent pandemics within what is happening in. And of course, for managing stress, the whole time management, positive thinking, relaxation skills, and so on. So that's how basically I'm looking at a reconceptualization of what was traditionally the 10 WHO life skills, and people just used to teach it, and then it was not uh, context based, but now it's being nuanced more and more into each skill is being nuanced into sub skills, and each sub skills is operationalized, then placed in a context, and then you have methods to actually equip people with the capacity, so that the learning then becomes that much nearer the truth that the children will face as they we look into
exactly. Yeah,
the emerging so the 21st century would have played out differently had COVID not happened.
true.
I don't know how the next 100 years are going to be. I'm not going to be
Hmm.
around. I'm not going to be around.
Nor will I be, and thank God for that.
But but
But
but I think that if this kind of envisioning can be done, and we create a roadmap, and PTF leaves an imprint, which and in a time capsule, and in 100 years later someone opens it and says, man, look at how these
oh,
guys
this happened.
yeah,
Okay,
these guys
during this
these
COVID.
guys
Yeah.
yeah, these guys predicted it.
Yeah, yeah, but I do think COVID will change education, dramatically. Private schools definitely, and government schools are slowly coming into it because we can't run schools the way we've been running. This is going to stay on for quite a while. So, you talked about this thing of looking at life skills in terms of managing internal aggression. Was it internal aggression and external aggression?
Oppression.
Sorry, oppression. Sorry, not aggression, oppression. Can you just explain that a little bit more? What when you talk about internal oppression and external oppression?
No, this is a very Augusto Boal
I
term.
know, I know, you're very fond of Gustav Boal.
As you know, I'm a passionate Boal practitioner.
Yes,
And Boal's seminal book was called Theater of the Oppressed.
yes,
And
exactly.
he was, of course, a protege and a collaborator of Paulo Freire, who wrote Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And
That's right.
so the terms are basically derived from there. So in internal oppression is how we restrict ourselves, how we oppress ourselves with our own doubts, um, and and
Yeah,
and self-esteem issue. Am I good enough? Will I be able to do it? Or I'm not good enough. I will not be able to make it. And so that's what is called as internal oppression. External oppression is essentially in a relationship context where either because of gender or because of disability, class, caste, etc., and the whole experience of marginalization and exclusion that so a lot of people, the self stigma, for example, that or what is called as internalized homophobia, that many people who have not come to terms with
yeah,
their LGBT identity, because we are socialized in a framework which is essentially patriarchal, heterosexist, and homophobic or transphobic. So, despite the fact that nobody has oppressed you, but because you're socialized to believe that heterosexism is the norm, this is called internalized homophobia, and
oppression.
therefore internalized oppression, that what is wrong with me, and you desperately try uh, to do stuff, to experiment, but your basic being and who you are is something else. That and of course there is the whole external oppression, marginalization, exclusion, bullying, that kind of stuff that takes place, and how do you deal with that at an individual level and at a systemic level. So a lot of this life skills also has to focus not just on an individual as someone who is experiencing, but also another individual who's the bystander.
Yeah,
And what position do you take when you see something playing out? Are you a proactive bystander,
yeah,
or are you someone who comes from the position of what we call as bystander apathy,
yeah,
that you
exactly.
watch but you don't do anything? So
That's right. So
that's
you
what.
see, life skills is not just for the person who's experiencing it, but also the bystander.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
Mm, mm.
So those were some of the words that came to mind
So
for life skills.
I like the fact that you talked about, that tree that you showed with various personal qualities,
Yeah.
because a lot of times people don't include that under life skills. They call them values or personal attributes and so on. Things like forgiveness
Hmm.
and I think was it
Loyalty. Yeah, I saw
loyalty?
loyalty,
Huma-
respect,
Yeah,
honesty. Yeah, even
yeah.
I had this question about
Uh,
it. You said life skills tree. I mean, sorry, I'm just
no, no, carry
coming
on.
in.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so do we really look at them as life skills, or so? When I was wondering, I just made a note of few, but all of them: forgiveness, loyalty, respect, honesty, compassion. Also, I think was there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
do we see them as life skills?
And I actually
Any
asking more as a devil's advocate question because I think they are very, very important, but
Yeah.
they're very important. But
any quality
Hmm.
that operates in a relational context,
Hmm.
and the self has two components: self in relation to self, and the relational self,
Hmm.
or the
right.
personal self and the social self.
Hmm. Hmm.
um, so if Akila, you're familiar with this question. I often put to children. I had actually tabled it in one of the TTF advisory board meetings for the iSelf, that between loyalty and fairness,
Yes,
which is a
You
yes,
have
and that's
asked.
one of my favorite thing also. Yes,
yeah, which is
yes,
a
I do.
superior value. So a child has a friend, and that child hits another child. Loyalty means you will protect the child. Fairness means you will tell your friend, look, I will always be your friend, and I will always be with you, but what you did was wrong.
So, exactly.
So in as much as a value or a mindset operates in a relational context, and what that means is that when you apply that value to behave towards someone or behave towards yourself, and it affects your life, it's a life skill. And which is why I'm saying that everything should be centered around context. And part of the work that should be done here when you develop the glossary is that the glossary must go uh, side by side or contiguous with contexts.
Yeah,
Then the relevance of it becomes that much more important. And there are many contexts, civic responsibility is one, citizenship. Now, what does citizenship mean, and how do you operationally define it? That uh, and what is, let's say, a basic minimum and optimum that any human being is expected to do in terms of his obligations towards himself, towards his immediate family, towards extended family, towards the condominium in which he or she lives, towards Jayanagar, fourth block where that condominium is located, towards South Bangalore, towards Bangalore urban, uh, towards
Yeah.
Karnataka, towards so
Yeah.
your ecosystem keeps on. So where does a human being pitch himself in terms of the realization of his or her identity? And this is not right or wrong. Someone may say, I'm interested only in my village. It doesn't matter to me about Namibia, Yemen, South Sudan, and I know stuff is happening there. Maybe your consciousness doesn't even expand because that level of information does not reach you. That so what kind of consciousness do we want children to do we want them to have an expanded world consciousness that looks at the entire world? The world is a huge place. India is a
Yeah.
huge place.
Yeah.
And so there is that paradigm also when we really define life skills to see in what ecology or in what geographical paradigm. uh, and what COVID has done is that it's really constricted our ecologies, both internal and external ecologies. And this constriction is likely to, that my retirement plan, for example, was to set up the entire child services of Tanzania. Everything was in place. That's not going to happen now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
uh, you know, so,
That's right.
for many of us, perhaps our last foreign trip is over.
Yes, possibly. I know.
So,
So I think Swapnil has a
yeah,
hand raised, but
yeah,
just before you, Swapnil, I just want to ask a question. You said that all life skills have to be seen within a context, and the context, matters so much. I see that,
yeah.
but there is a perspective from other people who say that there may be a certain core set of life skills that is applicable for everybody, and then there may be certain skills or certain capabilities which can be contextualized. What's your take on that?
No, a core set of life skills that is applicable to everybody in what context? I, 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 I,
Yeah.
I agree with you. There's a core life skill of decision making that applies to everybody as to what educational stream you want to take.
Hmm.
So you see,
Hmm.
there is a
There's
context.
a context in everything, you're saying.
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay. Yeah.
there are certain core life skills that will apply, and that's what WHO said. Everybody makes decisions every day. So it's a core life skill of something or the other. Uh, uh, sh-
Yeah.
Starting from something as innocuous and simple as what I should wear, to do I really want to take the same lunch to school, or should I buy stuff in the canteen to should I bunk class or and go to see a movie? To we are making decisions all the time. That
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's a skill that everybody uses every day in some context or the
Context
other,
to the other.
or the other. That
Yeah.
some days you may not apply the classical WHO life skills of coping with stress. A given day is stress free. Um, Whereas if you look at someone who runs an organization or runs a country, is there any given day which is stress free?
No.
You know,
Hmm.
running
That's correct.
running an organization.
Hmm.
Has Maya's life been? Has there been a day in Maya's life which has been completely stress free?
Long time ago, when I started my career. Anyway, Swapnil, you had a question. Swapnil? Yeah.
Yes, actually, two.
Yeah, sure.
One is, so can we say
Yeah.
that the application of a quality in a specific context is a life skill? That was my first thought. The second is, when we talk of a quality, now I was trying to find this word, I'm not very sure if this is the right way to define it, but it said that qualities are usually elements which are inherent. Now, and I was looking at the word responsible, which was one of the words in the tree that you showed. Now, I am just thinking, as a child, if I am responsible and if that's considered as a quality, have I not developed that looking at my parents? So, how is it inherent in me? So then qualities and life skills. Okay, now so that's where I started, but now I'm getting, these thoughts are just, there's a,
Getting a bit fuzzy. Yeah.
yes. So that's why I thought, I'm getting confused within the word life skill or a skill. Let's not even look at life skill, but skill and a quality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I hope all of you subscribe to the concept of fuzzy logic. A lot of very efficient machines work on fuzzy logic, especially washing machines.
Washing machines. I was just going to say the same.
Huh? They are kind of able to muddle through the different kinds of clothes and the colors and the size and whether they are cotton or otherwise. That let me start with a disclaimer. That tree is not my tree. I present it to you only as a concept. I'm not selling it. I'm not endorsing it. It's only a concept. So I start with the disclaimer. Secondly, um sometimes what happens is that the semantic differences in this area, and this incidentally is exactly what Maitreyi tried to dissect in her PhD thesis. So I would strongly urge you to read it.
Yeah.
I must also warn you that Maitreyi uh, very heavy. She's very Foucauldian uh, in her thinking.
Hmm.
Um, so it takes a couple of readings to
Okay.
understand the purport and the depth of her analysis. That so this is exactly what she's so sometimes these semantics are problematic. So to come back to the point that Swapnil made, let's look at it from this concept. What had happened initially in the early part of education 40, 50 years ago is that we used to have a subject called moral science.
Yes.
Now, moral science was very concept based, concepts or precepts like honesty and values and truth and all that. Then they shifted to family life education. So the family became the context. So
Yeah.
it shifted from concept to context. So the family became a context in which and a microcosm in which everything that happens in society plays out in a family. Affiliation, collaboration, manipulation, exploitation,
Yeah.
and everything plays out
Yeah.
there. And so, uh, and then it shifted to socially useful, productive work. So
Yeah.
it came to application. So
Yeah.
how do you apply all this in a socially productive way? And then we came into this whole civic responsibility, citizenry. So it shifted to application. So which is the point that so. Uh, are life skills then the application to a quality to a given context? To a certain extent, yes. But to come back to the point that Maya made about internal and external oppression, I'm using the same context to say that life skills have both an internal operation and an external operation. The application perhaps may be in an activity, in doing something, in a response. But there is an internal process also, which is also application, that there is a challenge that you're in, a predicament, a dilemma, a situation, and
Hmm.
you're applying certain thought processes and critical thinking also, therefore. So each of these skills, critical thinking, also has certain cognitive aspects of, and how am I analyzing the problem? how am I looking at the pros and cons? How do I look at referencing to what has happened in the past to say this solution worked but this one didn't. So perhaps I need to choose this. That so there is an internal process that go on, and then you put it into practice.
Yeah.
Another way to look at it is from the perspective of intent, content, method, and process. So if you look at life skills and a certain context, what is my intent?
Yeah.
If I'm doing a lesson, for example, my intent is to address anger. Let's say my intent is to address anger. What is the content? My content is I will talk about situations in which one feels angry. I may
Hmm.
talk about the difference between justified anger and unjustified anger.
Hmm.
I may speak about manifestations of anger, shouting, screaming, hitting, sulking, running away, breaking, I may speak about severity of anger. I may speak about consequences of anger. I may speak about the impact of anger in relationships and our notion of ourselves. I may speak about the relationship of anger with guilt. I may speak about anger about injustice as opposed to anger because one has been insulted. So that's content. What is the method? Do I do it as didactic precepts? Do I do it through role play? Do I do it through viewing snippets from a movie, and then we go to process. So how do I process it? So what did we see here? What does this mean? How else could this have been resolved? What do we learn here from anger? How will you apply it in your situation? And then we have meta processing. So they apply it, and they come back, and what worked, what didn't work, what do I think about it now? So there is an iteration that really happens. So Swapnil, that's the way that I would look at it. So I so what happens is we use the precept of or the concept of fuzzy logic here, that while sometimes these things become fuzzy because we get into the semantic fuzziness of these concepts, but if we put it into these kind of slots, just as the washing machine does, it uses a fuzzy logic and it manages to operate efficiently. And I believe we can do that. And I believe it would really be useful if you look at Maitri's work, because this is what she has tried to really
Yeah.
address, to navigate through all these definitions and appropriations to reach at a, let's say, purified or a distilled notion of where we started with the original concept of life skills, which was about well-being in the context of health. And because it started in the HIV/AIDS pandemic and risk-taking behaviors in adolescents
Yeah.
pertaining to
Yeah.
sexuality, substance abuse, and so that was the context in which it started. But now it's expanded to, like I said, and then the the corporate world appropriated it, to soft skills,
Hmm.
and then then it became a marketable commodity, because then it became something that actually increases profits for a company because you're applying those kind of soft skills. And
Yeah.
so
Hmm.
that's the approximately the kind of paradigm in which.
I just want to go back to what you were saying about the intent, content, method, process, and meta processing. I think that's quite clear. I'm just trying to understand the distinction between method and process.
the the,
Um,
the method, Maya, is the activity that you do.
is the activity? Got
Yeah.
it.
And
And the process,
there is
isn't that sort of embedded? Isn't the process embedded in the method?
a certain level of processing that occurs in the activity itself. There is a
Yeah.
certain element there, but you consolidate the learning by actually doing a processing of it.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
like a debriefing is something
Yeah.
we
Well,
also.
you could
So
call
the
it.
debriefing can also be part of the meta processing.
Yeah.
Also.
So for example, I may show a clip of two people arguing.
Yeah.
So that is the experience, that is the method. The processing is, I ask them, what is happening here? What
Yes.
are the feelings
Got
involved?
it.
What are the
Yeah.
feelings involved? How else could this have been resolved?
And the meta processing is what have I got out of
What have
it?
I got out of this, and how am
Yeah.
I going to apply it in my
Got
life?
it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Got
So,
it.
Shekhar, I have another question. This is, I'm getting back to context because you place a lot of emphasis on context, right? And you earlier you spoke of generic, experiential. Can you just elaborate on that? And you mentioned a couple of other uh, contexts. Can you? I missed that. Can you just?
Okay, I will expand on this a little more. In that triangulation that I speak about life skills and context of application,
Hmm, hmm.
in the context itself, when we work on the life skills, there is context and there is content. Gender is the context, gender violence is the content. Gender
Yes.
violence is the context, impact on women is the content. Impact on women is the context, where help is available is the content. Where help is available is the context, what are the methods by which healing take place is the content. So you see, there is always an interplay
Yeah.
between,
Got it.
and so that's how
Context.
you get into the nuancing of life skills education. That's what I mean by this arborization, or the
Hmm.
interplay between, you can get deeper and deeper
Hmm.
into a particular area, and then look at the interplay
Hmm.
between
Yeah.
context and content matters.
Yeah. Hmm. You talked about the market, the appropriation of life skills by the corporate, sort of the sector and so on. Because a lot of times life skills is also talked about in terms of employability skills and entrepreneurship skills. What's your take on that?
You do know that there are several organizations which run life skills education, and they have franchises also. Nobody's done a quality check on uh,
Uh,
yeah. I also would like you guys to have a look at the website and the prospectus of a remarkable institute that I happen to actually stay in and interact with, located in Gandhinagar.
hmm.
It's actually funded by IDBI and some other banks. It's called EDI, or Entrepreneurship Development Institute.
Hmm. Okay.
Maya, amazing syllabus, unbelievable. You would think that most of the content would be about economy and marketing and sales, and that kind of stuff of how do you market yourself. And it is such an evocative syllabus where they have sessions on films and filmmaking, and ecology, and the whole notion.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's about social entrepreneurship, and
Hmm.
not about INR type
Yeah.
of entrepreneurship.
I Hmm.
So, Entrepreneurship Development Institute, EDI, in Gandhinagar. Have a look particularly at their syllabus.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that you can derive from there, which really look at a, let's say, an evocative way in which life skills can be linked to entrepreneurship and the whole notion of employability. That uh, Maitri's critique was that it has been, LSC has been completely appropriated for employability.
Yeah.
कि ये सब तो ठीक है, ये सब करने के बाद जॉब मिलेगा कि नहीं,
Hmm.
सीधी सीधी बात कीजिए. अच्छा इंटरव्यू देगा, जॉब मिलेगा ना.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it has gone that route rather than the development of
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 oneself.
a happy person,
Yeah.
of a affirmative and fulfilled self of someone who's a sensitive partner, someone who is empathic towards social inequity, and has a position on social inequity, not just in the mind, but
Yeah.
in action as well. That and the whole philosophy of solidarity, that not just as a philosophy, but how do we demonstrate our solidarity? That just to give you an example, when many natural disasters take place, like the earthquake in Gujarat in 2001,
Yeah.
exactly
Tsunami.
20 years ago, tsunami and all that, and children are put in camps,
Yeah.
and some of them have lost family members, so they're undergoing grief and trauma. And as a service provider, I go there. Now there are certain premises from which I go there. On the one hand, I go there to provide depth therapy for those kids with severe post-traumatic stress disorder.
Hmm.
On the other hand, I'm there to provide counseling interventions for children who have a little anxiety, little concern. At the third level, I'm there to meet the developmental needs of children which have been fragmented because of
Hmm.
displacement. At a fourth level, I'm there only to structure their day so that they have some predictability. And at a fifth level, I'm there to express solidarity.
Hmm.
So this idea
Hmm.
that in a given situation which is affects the community at large, from what position of solidarity do I come, right? And how
Yeah.
do I manifest it? Uh, so
Yeah.
what are the operational dimensions of these qualities?
Is vital.
So
Hmm.
it may be there. Yeah, I express. I feel solidarity, but solidarity it cannot just be a feeling, a mere feeling. It
Exactly.
has to be operationalized
Yeah.
also.
Very true.
So that's where the glossary will become important.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
So the critical issue, there are two critical issues: context and operationalization. That will
Yeah.
really give your glossary an edge over existing glossaries.
Existing laws. Yeah. No, I agree. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. I think we sort of coming up on time. Are there any other
Yeah.
questions, Akila, Swapnil, anybody else?
Yeah,
Not from
Maya.
my side.
Roshna?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Hi, sir.
Hi.
Roshna here.
Hi.
So, few of the skills that you have shown, many of them categorize that as values, and there is a saying that values cannot be taught. So, because
They
many of
could be
the
caught.
values, yeah. So many of, for example, if we say respect, the manifestation of respect will be different in different places. For example, if I see my professor, it's a common practice to touch their feet if I am in North India, but South we never do that. So the way we show respect is different for different situations, different for different regions, and for maybe if I say being a Christian, I'm told obey my parents. So that may not be the definition of respect for in some other religious context. So how do we cater to these different interpretations of respect or different interpretations of the values?
Uh, this reminds me of a question that is often asked in training of therapists. Uh, and the question, we often say that some of the qualities that a good therapist or a good counselor should have is unconditional positive regard, uh,
Hmm.
empathy, and
Carl Rogers.
yeah.
Hmm.
So these are non-specific factors of Jerome Frank, but also some of Carl Rogers' person-centered. So
Therapy.
the
Hmm.
question that came was, can empathy ever be taught, or is it something inherent that? And it's very interesting because the most natural empath is a baby, because a baby will start crying if she sees someone else crying without knowing why that person is crying. And there are three processes that systematically destroy this gift. They are called parenting, education, and growing up.
Hmm.
Don't share your food with so and so. Don't be
Hmm.
generous. Look after your own. That kind of stuff. That what we found, Roshna, very interestingly, is if we wanted to teach empathy, we actually taught communication skills. We were not aiming empathy, we taught communication skills, and it's a very interesting exercise. It's called a helpful responses training. So a woman comes and says, my husband came home last night, he was very drunk, he broke the television set and he hit me, and I just didn't know what to do. And the trainer or the facilitator asked the trainee therapist, if you wanted to be helpful, what would you say next? So my husband came home last night, he was very drunk, he hit me, he broke the television set, I didn't know what to do. And it's actually a written exercise, and the trainee therapist, right, I will try to be reassuring. And so as a facilitator, I say, I'm not asking you what your intention is. Your intention to be reassuring is important and significant. What will you say? And I had some crazy responses. Did you do anything to provoke him? Not helpful. No, you must not tolerate it. You must go away to your mother's house. Not helpful. As opposed to saying that must have been very difficult. How did it end? How are you feeling now? Is everything all right? It's a much more. So we call it as depth of reflection. That so can are values inherent or can they be taught? And interestingly, this is what Swapnil said, that this observation of adult role models and how you imbibe that, the whole nature nurture debate, that so to a large extent, I think it's a combination of both. There are some people who are inherently empathic and inherently, but it's also nuanced by the way that a family functions. That, and you add to it some of the precepts that can be given in an educational sphere. That all three go together. At this point of time, I don't know whether I can give you a mathematical thing that 70% is inherent, 20% is how the parents behave, and it's only 10% education, or 50% is inherent, 10% is parents, but education is 40%. That I don't think metrics can be applied to this kind of stuff. I think all three are important. And of course, with COVID, schools are closed, but children spend a substantial amount of their time in schools, which is why I think learning precepts and learning possibilities are that much more in schools. So, Roshna, that's the way that I would look at it.
Hmm. Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
do we have time, Dr. Shekhar?
You have something else? You have?
Yes, I just have another.
Sure.
Thanks,
This is
Shekhar.
again to do with mental health and life skills, Dr. Shekhar. In fact, yesterday while we were talking to another interviewer, he had another point of view as to how, by expecting youth and children to develop life skills, uh, to uh, to not to live. Sorry, once, yeah, was putting too much of onus on the youth, and how there should be more of a systemic change. He was even talking in the context of LGBTQ, trans, their acceptance by the society, by the family and the community, rather than putting the onus on the youth and the young children to
The focus needs to be on the
yeah,
adults and the
yeah,
system.
yeah.
Akila, it's not an either or situation. No? One is not saying that you focus only on life skills, but will not focus. So it's not an either or issue. Um, that's my first point. My second point is look at it in terms of perspective. The kind of strategies and the scale of operation required for systemic change, and the strategies and the scale of operation required for and the time frame required for life skills education for the youth and young people. What time frame, scale, strategy, and scale are we looking at? So it's a pragmatic issue as well. So this is so. Um, it would be unfair if we said we will not address the system at all. It is not possible to address the system. The youth better get their act together that I agree would be, but that's not what we're saying.
Yeah.
We are saying that an equal amount, perhaps more effort needs to be put into looking at strategies that look at change of systems. But those strategies are more at campaign level, because we are talking about a very large constituency there in terms of numbers. And we're talking about a very large scale. And we should do it, and we are doing it. Uh, LGBT issues, the first affidavit from mental health professionals to the Supreme Court to say that it should be decriminalized was put by who? I'm asking you, who put the first affidavit in the Supreme Court against 377?
I'm afraid I'm not aware of this.
I did.
Oh, wow. Okay, okay. That's awesome. Yeah.
So I will send you a copy of the petition that I had put in. So what I'm
Hmm.
saying is, of course, we will work at a systemic
Hmm.
level, and
Hmm.
and that's
Hmm.
how. But then so it's a two prong. It is not an either or issue.
Hmm. Hmm.
And yes,
Sure, I get it. Yeah.
it would be unfair if we said that the system cannot be touched, the system cannot be changed. There's no point. You get your act together. That's not the position that we are coming from.
Hmm.
We are saying that it will be addressed not equally, but addressed in strategically proportionate manner,
Hmm. Hmm.
and till such times that we find a method for the irresistible force to meet the immovable object.
Hmm.
We have to find methods to provide a cushioning net, and that's
Hmm.
where life skills come from.
Hmm.
So we
Hmm.
are not looking at a hard push
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
these the young people. And also, when you take special constituencies, disability, LGBT, that of course the work with systems would have to be that much more. We agree with that, but
Yeah.
but it cannot be that focus entirely on changing the system, do not provide any life skills education for LGBT. That's also not correct, no?
Yeah.
True. True. Yeah.
That's right. Okay.
Hi, I
Yeah.
also have a small question if we still have time.
Okay. Just a quick question, Swati. That's Swati. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. I just, so you spoke a lot about how context matters for life skills. Is there any kind of structuring around this? Because you said like there's emotional context, or there's experience context, and then you also mentioned that context and uh, content keeps going with each other. But is there any kind of structure around this which we can refer to, or something like that? Like what are the different, how do we categorize contexts in specifically for life skills?
It's here.
And
You
yeah,
got it.
I think one has to work at it at the individual level, I guess.
I think
Or
what I would like to do, Swati, is that this is just a preliminary meeting. As the foundation know, my investments are process based, which means that my engagement in this process with TTF is not restricted to today's session. Uh,
certainly not. Certainly not.
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
I would like to work on the point that you have raised, Swati. I also wanted to say that one of the issues that interests me, and over which I have tried to gain some expertise, is a qualitative approach which is called category analysis. So
Mhm.
I get a lot of information. I source a lot of information from literature, from people's experiences, put them together and see whether I can put them into meaningful categories. And then under each category, there are subcategories. And so, for example, I did a set of two workshops with parents and parenting experiences in COVID, and some 50, 60 people send me their concerns. So I put those concerns into categories, and then I had a set of categories, and it's important for me because then I can teach it to other people to say, when you're doing sensitization programs, this is the kind of stuff that you can use. That, so
Yeah.
I'm happy to assist going forward, Swati, to actually refine and expand
Oh,
on
great.
this idea.
That'll be great. That'll be, because this is actually a 3-year journey. This is the first step. So, yes, we will be in touch then.
And
Yeah.
so, Maya, I will email you Maitri's PhD thesis.
Could you please? Yeah, I'd
And,
really appreciate that. Yeah.
and I think,
And we'll contact the Rajiv Gandhi Youth University and the others.
and the Central University of Kerala, Kasaragod,
Yes,
Dr.
Central University.
Dr. Radhakrishnan Nair, and the
Yeah.
Indian Association of Life Skills Education.
Yes.
These would
Yeah.
be some important.
And look at the syllabus or curriculum of the Gandhinagar EDI
Yes.
body too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the mails that you send me, Maya, I know that Akila has CC'd. Is everyone
So
here?
is Swapnil. Others have not been. Swapnil has also been, but
You'll
I will.
forward it.
I can.
You'll forward it.
Yes, I'll forward it to everybody. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Okay, guys.
Thank you so much. Stay safe.
All of
Thank
you.
you.
I know.
Thank you
That's-
so much.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much, Shekhar. Take care. Bye.